The musician's lifestyle is often one that is filled with endless temptation and vice. It seems that the mind of the artist is never satisfied unless it is augmented by some substance or another, whether it be drugs, alcohol. Part of my fascination with the music of our rock and roll heroes is trying to figure out why so many of them left us before their time. Nowhere is this more clear than in the eclectic and varied group of young musicians who died at the age of 27. This mysterious age is shrouded in mystery and ignites our imagination, as the list just seems to go on and on. So today we will pay tribute to those we have lost, and in doing so, hopefully shed some light on the reason why so many iconic artists have died at this same age, to be forever frozen in time as a member of the 27 Club. Next on If Guitars Could Speak. Hi folks, and welcome to If Guitars Could Speak, the documentary series where we examine famous musicians, awesome pieces of gear, and amazing stories from all around rock history. Today we will be examining the mysterious deaths of countless famous musicians at the age of 27, leading to the unofficial formation of the 27 Club. So many musicians have died at this particular age that it is shocking, and we will look at them today. And while this video will focus on only musicians, it should also be noted that a number of actors and other artists are also members of this dubious club, only adding to the mystery of why so many die at this particular age. But remember, if you like rock history content like this, remember to subscribe to the Guitar Historian channel, and also like this video to let YouTube know that you think other people would like to see it. There has only been one true scientific study done regarding the 27 Club by the British Medical Journal in 2011. They would conclude that there was, quote, no increase in the risk of death for musicians at the age of 27. They did, however, find that they had a higher risk of death in their 20s and 30s, but this wasn't necessarily limited to the age of 27. An article in The Independent also provided statistical evidence that musicians were not more likely to die at the age of 27. Of course, these studies did nothing to dampen the mysticism and romanticism surrounding the deaths of those in the 27 Club. I think that the reason there is so much controversy around it is the fact that so many huge stars died at the same age. These aren't little-known musicians. Some huge, massive names that were at the height of their musical powers died at the same age, and so this only adds to the questions. So sit back and let's review the musical members of the 27 Club. The first known musicians to die at the age of 27 were varied, including a Brazilian composer named Alexandre Levy, who died of unknown causes, and Louis Chauvin, an American ragtime musician who died of multiple sclerosis. But the first musician who is often cited as the major influence on the start of the 27 Club is blues trailblazer Robert Johnson. Johnson was one of the first blues musicians to play and sing in the style that we take for granted today, and he would go on to inspire countless musicians for decades to come. Unfortunately, very little is known of Robert's life or death, as his death certificate lists no known cause of death. It wasn't until 30 years after his death that Mississippi-based musicologist Gail Dean Wardlow found his death certificate, and we even know that he died at all. Johnson had simply vanished from the public eye after 1938, and too few people had wondered where he'd gone. As a result, this has caused many people to mythologize Johnson's life, filling in the blanks with fantastic tales of deals with the devil and a theory that Johnson had been murdered by a jealous husband of a woman with whom he'd flirted. But the truth is, we really have no idea how he died. Over the years, more musicians would meet their fate at 27. Swing and jazz pianist Nat Jaffe would die from complications from high blood pressure, and R&B singer-songwriter Jesse Belvis would die in a car accident. But our first victim of substance abuse would be Rudy Lewis, member of the iconic and influential vocal group The Drifters, who died of a heroin overdose in 1964. Lewis was known as the lead vocalist on hits like Some Kind of Wonderful, Up on the Roof, and On Broadway, and was due to record Under the Boardwalk the very next day when he was tragically found dead in his hotel room in Harlem, New York. Also passing in 1964 was R&B singer Joe Henderson, best known for his 1962 hit Snap Your Fingers. Henderson died of a heart attack. In 1967, singer Rockin' Robin Roberts died in a car accident. Roberts was best known as a member of the Fabulous Wailers, no relation to Bob Marley's outfit, who had an early hit with Louie Louie recorded before the best-known version by the Kingsmen. And in 1968, lead guitarist Malcolm Hale of the pop group Spanky and Our Gang would die of carbon monoxide poisoning. In early 1969, one of the famed members of Larry Parnes' stable of young British pop stars named Dickie Pride died of an accidental overdose of sleeping pills. Pride's best-known hit was a cover of Little Richard's Slippin' and Slidin', and other members of the Parnes stable included Tommy Steele, Billy Fury, and Marty Wilde. Another major touchstone of the 27 Club would join on July 3, 1969, when Rolling Stones founding member Brian Jones would be found dead at the bottom of his swimming pool. Jones's death is shrouded in mystery and conjecture, but the years leading up to Brian's death are not in question. Brian's original vision for the Stones as a blues combo was pushed aside by young manager Andrew Loog Oldham, who rebranded the Stones into a more pop-angled group. As a result, Brian never seemed to fit into the group and receded into a haze of drug and alcohol abuse that stifled his creative output and gave him an often zombie-like personality. There are many conspiracy theories regarding Brian's death, but in the end, police and investigators over the years have never been able to prove any wrongdoing, leading the medical examiner to rule that Brian, quote, died by misadventure. The examiner also noted that Brian's liver and heart were both enlarged due to prior drug and alcohol abuse. However his death occurred, Brian was a restless soul with a mighty talent that we all wish had been more fully explored. One more member would join in '69, German singer Alexandra, who died in a car accident due to faulty brakes. But 1970 would claim not one, but three titanic talents. On September 3rd, Canned Heat guitarist and vocalist Alan Blind Owl Wilson would be found dead behind Heat lead singer Bob Height's Topanga Canyon home. His death was ruled an accidental overdose of barbiturates, sleeping pills, and alcohol, and also as a possible suicide. But Alan is our ninth forgotten fretmaster and one of our most popular, so for more on his entire story, you can view that video here when you're done. Only 2 weeks later, on September 18th, we lost Jimi Hendrix. I would think this is a man who needs no introduction to guitar fans, often cited as the greatest player to ever lay hands on a fretboard. Hendrix packed a huge amount of music into only 4 active years between 1966 and 1970, and is unquestionably the most influential rock musician who ever lived. I'm working on a video about Hendrix that should be coming out before this year is out, and even though he's been chronicled more than any other musician, I think I figured out a way to cover him in a different way. Stay tuned. But Hendrix's official cause of death was listed as asphyxiation, having aspirated on his own vomit after using barbiturates. Then, only 2 weeks after that, we lost Janis Joplin, another massive talent that blew audiences away with her singularly styled vocals and powerful stage persona. Starting out in the blues rock outfit known as Big Brother and the Holding Company, one of my favorite band names ever, she rose to prominence as a solo artist as well, culminating in her seminal 1971 release Pearl that was released posthumously. Janis also fell to a drug overdose, also having very public problems with many different substances, especially heroin. 1971 wouldn't be any more kind to us. In March of that year, frontman and vocalist of funk band Dyke and the Blazers, Arlister Dyke Christian, would pass away by murder on a Phoenix street, with many reports saying that it was due to a drug deal gone bad. On July 3rd, 1971, 2 years to the day Brian Jones died, Jim Morrison would pass away in France. The famed lead singer, poet, and spiritual leader of California band The Doors, Morrison's image as the bad boy of rock extended to reports of indecent exposure, inciting mob mentality at the band's shows, and of course, prodigious amounts of mind-altering drugs and alcohol. Although the entire band would experiment with LSD and other mind-altering substances, Jim took it to the nth degree. Tragically, though, Jim seemed to have been cleaning himself up around the time of his death, losing weight and looking forward to recording with the Doors again. But he would tragically die of heart failure, found that morning in the bathtub by his longtime girlfriend, Pamela Corson. For much more on this, the Doors, and especially Doors guitarist and writer Robbie Krieger, you can view my episode of Forgotten Fretmasters about Robbie right here. The 27 Club would continue accepting members over the next years. In 1972, soul singer Linda Jones, best known for her ballad Hypnotized, would pass due to complications from diabetes. In March of 1973, Scottish band Stone the Crows' guitarist Leslie Harvey would tragically die of electrocution after touching a microphone which was not grounded properly at Swansea Top Rank. Stone the Crows bassist James Dewar would go on to join guitarist Robin Trower's band through the rest of the 70s. More on Robin and James in episode 2 of Forgotten Fretmasters right here. In March of 1973, founding member of the Grateful Dead, keyboardist and singer Ron Pigpen McKernan would die of gastrointestinal hemorrhage due to alcohol abuse. After his death, Jerry Garcia would say, quote, "We all knew this was the end of the original Grateful Dead." Pigpen's best-known vocal contribution was on the Dead's cover of Good Lovin'. Later in 1973, vocalist Roger Lee Dorham of the 70s soul combo Bloodstone would die of injuries suffered from falling off a horse. In August of 1974, keyboardist Wally Yohn from the band Chase, best known for their hit Get It On, would die in a plane crash along with other members of the band. In February of 1975, Dave Alexander, bass player for the influential punk band The Stooges, would die of a pulmonary edema brought on by complications from alcoholism. Alexander struggled with substance abuse for years after being fired from the band in 1970 after showing up to a gig too drunk to play. Later in April 1975, a truly tragic death would occur. Welsh musician Pete Ham, lead guitarist and singer of the legendary early 70s band Badfinger, would die by suicide, hanging himself after a long financial battle with manager and con man Stan Polly. Badfinger was discovered for early inclusion to the Beatles record label Apple in a string of hits in the early 70s, such as Day After Day, No Matter What, and Baby Blue would follow. Ham and Badfinger bassist Tom Evans would also co-write the seminal standard Without You, famously covered to massive success by singer Harry Nilsson. But after a number of substandard releases and decline in popularity, the band signed a horrible deal with Polly that would end up draining their bank accounts and leaving them penniless. Despondent at the situation, Ham would take his own life, a truly unsung rock talent that we will soon be chronicling in the Forgotten Fretmasters series. The breathtaking amount of musicians that the 27 Club would take over the next years would be staggering. New Zealander and bass player Gary Thane of Uriah Heep and the Keith Hartley Band would die of a drug overdose. Spanish singer Cecilia died in 1976 in a car accident. Helmut Kohlin, German singer-songwriter for the band Triumvirate, died of an accidental carbon monoxide poisoning when he was listening to the band's studio tracks in his car. Influential power pop guitarist, singer, and songwriter Chris Bell of the band Big Star died after striking a telephone pole in his Triumph TR-7. Bell's work would go on to influence such acts as Beck, Wilco, and REM in later years, definitely on the list for a future Forgotten Fretmasters episode. Guitarist for the English rock band the Count Bishops, Zenon de Fleur, would also die in an automobile accident in 1979. And a 1980 reggae artist and close friend of Bob Marley named Jacob Miller would die in yet another car accident. Miller was best known as lead singer of the band Inner Circle, who were a consistent staple on tour supporting Bob Marley and the Wailers. Guitarist and lead singer of California punk band The Minutemen named Dennis Boone would die in, you guessed it, another car accident. Boone's guitar style was interesting to say the least, with Dennis setting his amp to all treble with the bass and mids turned all the way down. In 1988, rare Soviet rock musician Alexander Bashlichev would die of, quote, a fall from a height, probably suicide. It should be noted that Bashlichev was breaking the law by performing rock music in Soviet Russia, which musicians would get around by performing in people's flats and houses secretly. Amar Singh Chamkila, an Indian singer and composer of Punjabi music, died of murder along with his wife and other band members in an unresolved assassination. Famed American graffiti and graphic artist Jean-Michel Basquiat, who also dabbled in music with his experimental band called Grey, which just barely gets him into the music category, died of a speedball overdose in 1988. Pete DeFreitas, drummer for English rock band Echo and the Bunnymen, would die in a motorcycle accident. Northern Irish singer for the punk band Five Go Down to the Sea, named Finbar Donnelly, died in a bizarre drowning accident in Hyde Park's Serpentine Pond. Country music singer and guitarist Chris Austin, who toured extensively with Reba McEntire, would die in a plane crash on March 16, 1991. Bulgarian new wave musician Dimitar Voev, who formed the influential band Nova Generacia, or New Generation in English, would die of cancer. His band would go on to achieve cult status among new wave fans over the years. Lead singer of American punk grunge band called The Gits, Mia Zapata, was brutally raped and murdered in July of '93 in Seattle after a gig, and this matter would go unresolved for 10 years until it was finally solved by DNA evidence. Our next entry into the 27 Club was interestingly another Seattle area native, but is also better known as the one and only Kurt Cobain. Another musician who needs little introduction, Cobain achieved massive mainstream success with his band Nirvana, and much like the British invasion in the early 60s, launched an entirely new wave of stripped-down, unpretentious rock and roll after a decade of overproduced and synth-driven pop music. Cobain's death is another full of conspiracy theories, but the last year of his life was full of drug overdoses, constant stomach pain, and of course serious substance abuse. He would take his own life and be discovered in a room above his garage in Seattle on April 5th, 1994. Like the deaths of Hendrix, Morrison, and Joplin in the 70s, this death hit our generation hard. Connected with Cobain, fellow grunge musician Kristen Pfaff, bass player for bands Janitor Joe and later the Courtney Love-led Hole, died of a heroin overdose. The next year in '95, Welsh musician Richie Edwards, famed guitarist and lyricist for the Cool Cymru band Manic Street Preachers, would disappear into thin air near a common suicide site, his body never having been found. As a result, Edwards became another 27 Club legend, with fans swearing that they have seen him turn up multiple times, sometimes many years after his reported death. After Edwards' death, no fewer than 17 musicians around the world, from all different musical genres, would join the infamous 27 Club. But a more recent musical addition would come in 2011 and reignite interest in this macabre group when eclectic and talented British singer-songwriter Amy Winehouse would pass away from alcohol poisoning July 23rd of that year. Winehouse was known as a cross-genre talent with an extremely bright future, but like her predecessors, she was taken in the prime of her life, and no fewer than 11 more musicians would join the 27 Club by the time we reach present day. What is it about this mystical number? Why the age of 27? Many psychologists have wondered whether the combination that most 20-somethings believe they are invincible, coupled with the unfettered access to substances in an industry where sober musicians and artists are rare, cause their addictions to grow exponentially. There is a long history of the greatest artists being tortured souls, and we regard those who have created the best music, film, and art by examining their dark sides even more closely than we examine their towering achievements. The shocking number of young artists who have died at the age of 27 is most likely a coincidence, but at the same time, our brains will just not allow us to simply accept that. There are just too many icons who left us at that age, whatever the reason that the universe decided on the number 27. All we can do is remember those who are frozen in time as a member of the 27 Club. But that's another episode of If Guitars Could Speak. Hopefully you enjoyed this special and illuminating look into the 27 Club. Remember to please subscribe to the Guitar Historian channel and be sure to like the video. Also, remember to check out all the documentaries we link to throughout this video for more information on a few of these iconic artists. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time.